Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome to for the third of the AutoTalk Weekly Wraps. Now, I'm coming to you from a weird location today, that being the driver's seat of a mini JCW Countryman. But John Cooper works it still? Yeah. Anyway, I'm out and about on the road today. I've just been off to swap cars with Matthew, but nothing gets in the way of the weekly wrap uh, going live on time, including moving around arrivals. I gather you're a bit busy on the yard there this morning, Graeme, with a few vehicles joining your fleet.
Yep, there's transporters about, I think, 44 rolling in this morning. And the usual story, they'll all turn up at the same time, and all the transporter drivers will wonder why we can't get all the cars off right there, right now. It's the same thing for all of us.
Do you miss the days when you'd go and pick up 30 cars from the wharf yourself and run them down the Northwestern with a dealer plate on the back one and a dealer plate on the front one and nothing in between?
Oh, gosh, that's a trade secret. I mean, no one ever did that, right? Am I showing my age? For all the younger dealers here that are watching the show, yes, indeed, back in the old days in Auckland Wharf, that's what you used to go and do. We'd all trundle down to the wharf. Maybe we had more than one X-plate. And my job was usually to pick the cars. You'd pull them out of this big, enormous stack of cars. The Steve doors would just jam them into big rows. And I'd have to pull them out of these rows of 15 cars and squeeze them around, stick some gas in them, line them up, jumpstart them. And then the caravan of guys would come back and pick them up, caravan of 5 cars, 1 plate, and then off they'd go, repeat and rinse. So, yeah, the good old days. Lots of fun.
I think those were back in the days where, let's face it, I think my first car didn't really have a warrant or registration for the entirety of its ownership. You kind of get away with a bit more back then. Those were the days.
Yeah, I guess you did. Was it any less safe? No. Did the cars?
Yes.
I don't know. Regulation and bureaucracy gets in the way of everything, right? What's a D plate between friends?
Just no. Let's just move on to the first story. So, Ford New Zealand.
Move on, Richard. Move on.
Yes. Ford New Zealand has confirmed the pricing of the next generation Ranger. This came in last night after everyone had gone home from the office because we have to live by the timings of, I think, pretty much Australia. So the range starts at $46,990 for the XL 4x2 chassis cab. It should be cab chassis. Through the top spec Raptor, priced at $89,990. Most models have incurred a price increase of $400 to $1,600, which is actually not bad when you look at what's coming in that vehicle and the way prices are rising on vehicles at the moment. Ford's also included estimated clean car fees for each model in their listing, stating that all non-V6 models are likely to incur a fee of less than $3,000 thanks to improved emissions. The V6 diesel, though, that is quite a different story, and that is pretty much up the top of the rung with about a $5,200 fee on it. But let's face it, most Ranger buyers, and I was chatting about this with someone else in the industry this morning, they're not really going to give a damn. It's the Ranger's kind of the ute that people seem to buy because they want a Ranger rather than because they have to have a ute. Is that a fair statement, you guys think?
Matthew?
I'll throw it over to Graeme, the resident Ranger owner, for his view on that last point.
Yeah. Well, look, yes, I've got a Ranger. And actually, you know what, Richard, you're kind of right too. I drive a Ranger kind of because I like the idea of a Ranger. Yes, I'm not brand centric, but I think there's a huge loyal following, and it doesn't really matter whether the truck's good, bad, or indifferent. There's this big following of the vehicle itself. Ford could put or do anything they like to it, they'd still sell. The fee is not going to deter most purchases. Perhaps it might impede some of the fleet buyers, but I think in general, it's going to sell like hotcakes. It doesn't matter what you do, it's going to sell.
I think the discussion we had this morning was around, who buys what ute? And the kind of theory being is that if you really want a Ranger, you buy a Ranger. If you're a farmer and you need something that's tough as nails and you can probably find a dealer in most rural towns, you buy a Hilux. If you really just need a good, solid work ute and you don't have a lot of money to spend, you go buy a Triton. And if you need a decent work ute, but you want to put it on finance, you go buy a Nissan Navara. And then there's several other options fitting everyone. But I'm good on Ford for not raising the prices. I'm surprised the Wildtrak V6 is not more, considering how that compares to the old model. You're getting a lot more vehicle there for not a huge a huge amount extra money over the old vehicle. So it's going to be interesting, but I don't think they're going to have any trouble selling those V6 diesels. They are going to
they'll fly out.
Sell
But
like
what
hotcakes.
was the old bi-turbo Wildtrak? Because the V6 diesel's 80k, which I think it's the first time we've seen an 80k Ranger that isn't the Raptor.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on how you look at it, though. They've added a lot of extra equipment, and Rangers were getting a lot of accessories chucked at them. So I guess it's going to depend on whether the accessory mix stays the same when people go and drive out of the dealership with those vehicles. I've looked at the.
So to say, there's the key, Richard. You just hit the nail on the head. So the trick is, Matthew, it's not about the top end Ranger selling, because there are so many accessories available, not just at your Ford dealer, but the minute you drive out and around the corner to the accessory departments that sell everything from lift kits to 20-inch wheels. I mean, let's face it, every second Ranger has a set of 20s on it. Snorkels, light bars. So the accessory market is huge. And you can actually buy an XL or a basic spec Ranger and dress it up any way you like for a lot cheaper than you could a top-end Wildtrak or a Raptor. So it's that customization basis that I think really helps the base model pricing.
I think the typical Kiwi Ranger is an XLT with accessories rather than a Wildtrak, because I think people would rather pick their own gear. So.
Yeah, and everyone peels the high rider sticker off, so you don't know that it's a two-wheel drive.
I think they stopped putting the high rider sticker on ages ago because people were doing that. Yeah. Now, next story. MOL is going to stop shipping used EVs. Now, this was something we mentioned in the last episode before even anyone else had reported it. We've since had confirmation. They're one of the world's largest shipping companies. They've confirmed they will stop carrying used electric vehicles, including those coming to New Zealand. In response to questions from AutoTalk, Japan operator Mitsui OSK Line says the decision was made from a safety point of view. I mean, just how big is this from a New Zealand perspective? I mean, my understanding is that most of the package shipping options, which covers a lot of the market, and alongside Armacup, Toyo Fuji, they are still going to keep bringing EVs in. So I'm not sure it's going to mean a huge amount of disruption for the market. Maybe a few cars having to wait for a different ship. You're probably closest to the logistics of getting cars down than the rest of us, Graeme. Any issues you think from your side?
Well, no. I mean, look, we were sort of waiting to see if there'd be a follow-through from the likes of Toyo Fuji or Armacup. We've since had confirmation from all the other major logistics suppliers that there's no decision made, or more to the point, there's no thinking around halting the importation or shipping of used EVs. And I'd wonder on the MOL decision whether it was the basis of their insurance or their self-insurance, and I don't know which they carry, that made the decision for them. So was it an internal decision by MOL, in which case I wouldn't expect to see any sort of carryover to their lines, or was it actually from external insurance, from marine insurance, in which case there may be a sterner eye being passed over the other shipping lines in time? We don't know, and we're not privy to those sort of decisions. But at the moment, there appears to be no impediment to the shipping of used EVs through the other lines. I think the number was less than 20% carried by MOL anyway. So I think if you're in the business of logistics in any other particular line, it's just carry on as normal.
And if from what I'm hearing is correct, I suspect we're more likely to see MOL drop this notice than we are to see others joining it. Sometimes you worry with these things that it's the first of many. I think it's more that it will be dropped. I've heard various things about whether MOL were going to straight away recall it or not. So I don't think anyone should be really panicking about that move.
No, I don't either.
Now, look, there's a lot of frustration on Clean Car out there. The MIA, and this is a couple of times now, have said basically they were very frustrated with the last minute changes to the process. We had a lot of tweaking around the fees going on, and so on and so forth. To quote David Crawford, our gripe is that officials took all the time they needed ahead of the deadline to get their bit right, and then they just thought we could flip a switch. David Crawford says the business processes we have to put in place to get these changes implemented without breaking laws requires a couple of months prep, and we didn't get that. And I think what he's talking about there is when the VIA successfully argued for a discount for used vehicles, the return of the proper discount for used vehicles, the original discount for used vehicles. They also tweaked, and it was in some cases by $5, $10, $50 up or down, sometimes for the positive, the rates for new cars as well. But the problem being was that a lot of dealer literature and a lot of advertising assets and so forth had already been redesigned around the rates. And that's not necessarily easy to do. I bet you there's a bit of paper that's gone to the tip over those changes. But, it is just seems to be a bit of a trend at the moment on legislation being a little bit of a mess, a little bit of a patch-up job at the end. We've seen the same with the financial services legislation. Seeing in other areas at the moment, it's almost like we need things just to slow down a little and do these things at a proper pace. Fast is good, but fast if done properly. Yeah.
Matthew, what are you hearing out there about this? I mean, you're talking to the dealers out there as well. What are you hearing?
You're muted, Matthew.
He's muted himself.
We can't hear you, mate.
Well, while he's figuring out his microphone for a second, from my perspective in the used trade, and look, kudos to NZTA. They are dealing with it. I've been a little bit harsh perhaps about them. They are dealing with a dud when it comes to rushed legislation, and they haven't been given all the right tools, all the right information. I mean, this is broadcast well into last year around the limitations of the whole MVR structure, about what it could actually handle given the information that was technically speaking available, but the actual process of getting that information into workable form was a whole different matter. And we're seeing that now. From a dealer perspective, we work with what we have to work with. There's been a lot of shortcomings for the trade, I think, first of all, around a lack of understanding. I'd argue that a lot of dealers out there still haven't a clue what this actually means. They're in the business just to sell cars, and they've got no idea about clean car discounts. They've got no idea what the rebate means, whether they claim it or the customer claims it. And I think they're just sort of hoping the whole thing kind of goes away. There's been some glaring gaps and some failures. I guess that's just data at work. I've had customers calling up that have been told that their Aqua has a $2,000 fee attached to it. I've got people saying that the car was registered back in March when it wasn't. I've got cars that should have rebates that haven't. There's been all those little issues going on. And that's just teething stuff. They're going to work their way through it. But what it does show is the system was not adequately set up in the first place. And you're right, Richard. I think there's been a real lack of understanding from bureaucracy and government about how much time these things take to enact.
The interesting thing I'm picking up from the thing, and this is one of those things like the electric vehicles on ships story last week, and I'm sure there'll be more out of it. I've been hearing, picking up on Facebook and a few other places, that sorry, the wife is calling. That
bring home the work, Richard.
The people have succeeded, and look, this is scuttlebutt Facebook message group stuff. People have succeeded in claiming rebates off voters and paperwork for uncompleted deals. So vehicles still at dealerships, sign up, get a sales agreement, pull out of the sales at the last minute, having claimed the rebate. I hope that is just an incorrect rumor. I wonder if the NZTA is doing only the basic amounts of checks and trying to push through the volume very quickly to try and keep this thing going, so I don't get any complaints that things aren't happening right. But I hope it isn't true, and I hope it's just teething problems. But we will be finding that out, to keep an eye on the AutoTalk as to what's going on there. And they do have a volume to do. I mean, can we hear you yet, Matthew?
Test. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had a little wee failure. I'm going to throw this thing out the door. Yes, you can hear me. So I did have a chat to just, I guess, to put a finer point on it. I talked to Crawford and I talked to Dave Vincent last week, or this week as well, and both were very quick to say that none of this. NZTA is doing a very good job with what tools it has. Sort of further to what Graeme was saying. I guess one of the few silver linings is that hopefully when Clean Car Standard comes along, some of the learnings from what we've experienced in the last week and a half can be applied to that. But yeah, we'll see then.
I don't hold out any hope at all, Matthew. I think you are you're breathing the rarefied air. If you think that Clean Car Standard is going to be any smoother a process, and I get back to the point that I made at the start. an awful lot of dealers out there have no idea how even the CCD works, let alone the nightmare that's going to be CCS. And yeah, look, I'm going to stick my stake in right now. And so I think this is just bureaucratic steps too far to regulate the motor industry. You could argue whether CCD is a workable process. Get it right, it's workable, whether that's an argument or not. But I think CCS is just a whole different game altogether, and I am not looking forward to it. And B, I think that it's unnecessary bureaucracy imposed upon an industry that just doesn't get it. And for that matter, consumers that don't get it either.
Yeah, and so the CCD is something that gets, and I'm for the CCD. I think the CCD done right has a really big part to play in the future of the trade. And I think it can have real impact and point people in the right direction. And it's a workable system with just a little bit of fine tuning. The clean car standard, you've got distributors throwing teams of accountants and strategists at it, and they still don't know. They just still don't know exactly how it's going to play out. Yeah.
To what end? What are they trying to achieve?
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I mean, it is having some impact in that we're seeing, it is helping source electric vehicles for the New Zealand market or cleaner vehicles for the electric market. But I wonder whether the CCD would have done that without the clean car standard. So we'll see. I mean, just as I guess the last point, Matthew, I gather we've reported the numbers on how many discounts they've given. It's hit a milestone already.
Yeah, in a somewhat conveniently timed release, they announced the other day that 12,000 vehicles have claimed CCD discounts thus far. I expect that's going to balloon pretty significantly with the new cars coming along in April and Aquas and hybrids and the like claiming it. But it is a milestone of sorts. But convenient timing.
Well, we will see what the numbers go. But I mean, there's going to be thousands that will be claiming it, but also there will be thousands that will be paying a penalty. So yeah, excellent. Look, a nice. Relatively short. We've kept it under 20 minutes this time for our 10-minute weekly wrap. There we have got one viewer, one person watching online, which is pretty much first for us. So round of applause for that person.
Send them a medal. Well done.
If you are watching this live, go and throw a comment under the video, and I'll send you a free subscription to the magazine. How does that sound? But I will know if it's anyone who's done it after this is stopped recording. But no, look, thanks for watching. And if you're watching this or listening to this later, also thanks for joining up. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We are online every Friday at within a few minutes of 10 o'clock, depending on what's arrived on the back of a truck at a dealership at the time. And we'll see you again next week with more random BS from the automotive trade from me, Richard Edwards, Matthew Hansen there in the middle of the screen, and Graeme Macdonald on the far right. Thanks, everyone.
See you next Friday.
Yeah.
Far out.